welcome to About Podcast. This is episode 12. We have Craig Madden on. He is a local San Diego chef, works at Terra American Bistro and KFM Bistro. He's worked as executive chef, sous chef, line cook, kitchen manager, all that good stuff at a bunch of places here in San Diego. And he happens to also be one of my really good friends from, I've known him since high school. So how about it? Episode 12, Craig Madden. Let's give some backstory first. So Craig and I went to high school together.
That was a long time ago, dude.
Yes.
We're going on 20 years ago.
I know.
That'll make you feel old real quick.
2 years.
In 2 years, oh yeah. Will there be a 20th reunion?
I hope not.
God, I'm not going if there is.
Well, the 10-year reunion, I purposefully didn't go because they tried to charge like $160 a person.
I didn't even get that far to figure out how much it was. I was like, nope.
But it was cool. Yeah. We all actually met up at a park the day after with like a bunch of people who cared and mostly had children.
Yeah.
And wanted to just catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
and it was still
party
really
like they were still in high school.
It was still so awkward.
Remember that touchdown pass?
It was so awkward.
Yeah.
Like, what do you have to talk
dude,
about?
that sounds way too awkward. And then I would actually not enjoy not having the safety net of name tags in that situation.
I think
I know I'd feel shitty the whole reunion just being like, hey man, that I grew up with. And I remember spending the night at your house 1,000 times.
I think the idea of like, let's get together and just outside of the, confines of this party that we're all supposed to be certain people at was great in theory.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, oh, this is why I hated high school.
Probably don't have anything in common with any of you. Yeah. I was working in San Francisco at Green's Restaurant at the time of the 10-year reunion. And I was just thinking to myself, well, first of all, no, I'm not going. Second of all, I'm like, there is no way, from being in a kitchen that is a valid excuse to get time off of work. I need to go to my high school reunion.
Really?
No way. There is no way.
That's a once every 10 years excuse.
That is not a valid excuse.
Yeah, no.
A wedding, a death in the family.
And even those are hard.
Yeah.
Really?
Like, it's going to be like, if somebody died, they better be really important to you.
They better have died, like, today.
Well, you have to understand that, like, the impact you have by not being there means the place is not running properly and everybody else has to do your work for you.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie and the teamwork that's involved there, it kind of erodes at that quickly.
Yeah. That's why the first thing you do in a kitchen is ask the people who are going to have to do your job when you're gone. You don't ask your boss first. You ask for the people around you that need to, that are going to pick up the slack, and then if they are okay with it, then you ask for time off.
That's so cool.
That reminds me, so every single aspect of anything I've ever heard you talk about working in a kitchen reminds me so much of being in the Navy.
It's very, very militant.
It is very similar.
Yeah.
It's very much the same kind of environment.
Yeah.
We just curse better than you.
That's true. Much more creatively, for sure.
Well, because there's no HR.
Right.
It's my dad taught me how to curse and the kitchen taught me how to perfect it into an art.
Yeah, and it's a lot more creative than just like your standard homophobic locker room put downs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like
no,
in the kitchen,
you get real creative.
Artists.
Yeah, we take pride.
Yeah.
In our ability to make people feel uncomfortable. And now I'm in like management. Now I can't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not nearly
Now you're
as
the
much
one
fun.
that people tell on too.
Right.
They're like,
or the ones that when I walk in the room, they all stop talking. Like, oh, come on, guys, come on.
Earlier too, you said something about what are you talking about? Music with. You used the phrase artistic people, and I don't know if this is kind of a non sequitur at this point because it's been a couple minutes, but I was just gonna say I think, how I think you create an artist, you feed them art. I think human beings have an innate aesthetic self that can be developed, and I think that anyone can become an artist if they've had enough exposure to art at the right critical points in their life.
Nature versus nurture.
Right. I mean, there are these critical moments. There are these critical development stages. It seems that's what we think we understand about childhood development.
Well, then, you consider like math and art.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if somebody who's completely right-brained and just right-brained or left-brained, I can't remember anymore which is which, but whatever side of the brain is the math side of the brain.
Yeah.
which I tend to fall on. Like, I'm not necessarily an artist. I don't play an instrument.
Well, you're a chef.
I cook,
you're an artist,
I was very relieved to find some sort of artistic outlet in my life because I didn't have any.
Right.
But for me, it was sports before that.
Right.
But sports are very mathematical.
Yeah. There's an art there too.
Yeah, there is, but I think it's more linear.
Body movement.
Like when I don't know, maybe it's my own interpretation of what art is. Like for me, art is being able to think freely. Whereas
creatively,
and to be able to think outside the box, I guess. But even with food, I struggle with that. Like with food, I tend to fall back on the things I've been taught, as opposed to being able to push the envelope and create something new. Unless, of course, I'm at home and then I'm the complete different person. I just look in the refrigerator and I'm like, shit, that's about to go bad.
Yeah.
Right. What can I do with that? Honestly, you know what?
I
want to press this because this is a really interesting thread to pull on. I want to challenge that. I think that, for one thing, I don't think it's so much artistic versus non-artistic.
I want to say I'm not disagreeing with you either.
No. I know you're not. I'm just saying this is an interesting thread. I don't think it's so much artistic versus non-artistic person. I think it's how you look at what's happening and which ways creativity comes out. Because I think all human beings are innately creative. I think some people they can see the application of creation in more domains than others because they've practiced it in more domains. But I think, for instance, the athlete so let's talk about maybe football. You think about football, and there's a singular goal. There's only a handful, 4 or 5 ways to score points in football, and there are some predefined kind of ways, well-worn paths on how to do that. However, even or even routes. You think about running a route, like a receiver running a specific route. Even given that this is how the route works, the body movement of that individual person is a creative endeavor because they're taking all of their physicality, the time they put in the gym and on the track and all of that stuff, the time they've got. Only one person in the world with those cleats on, with the weight of those pads on, with that body build and that bone density and all that stuff moves exactly like that person.
And they've got somebody in front of them trying to screw them up.
Martial arts is a great example because
that's
it's so related to dance and in the way that like body movement of two individuals around each other is mostly what martial arts centers on. It's self-control, body movement, distribution of weight, moving your own muscle mass, your own, and then also how that relates to one other, or some cases multiple other people. But all of that is artistic. There is a creative self because you learn strikes, you learn defense techniques.
I want to touch on that a little bit more.
You use them in a certain way.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It was even in sports or in martial arts, you're given the way you're supposed to do it, but each individual takes it on and creates their way of doing it. Or in a split second when they have to react to something that's happening to them while they're doing that move, they have to think creatively and figure out how to, counteract or get out of that or whatever. I think that's absolutely creativity.
I've been studying martial arts since I was 16, and my best friend who I've been studying with most of my life, excuse me, he took a completely different approach to teaching, and he styles the way that he teaches each individual based on, he wrote a curriculum, but the curriculum is based on your personality and the way your body moves, and he has kind of a very artistic approach to it. Whereas you're right, Sandi, that martial arts traditionally is very linear. This is how you do it. Mm-hmm. We have kata, which is, you're the same movement over and over and over again, practicing it until it becomes natural. And all of that's fine and dandy when there's rules and a ring and a referee and one-on-one and all that stuff. All that shit goes out the window when you're talking about, say, a street fight. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's no rules.
Right.
It's never one-on-one. You're never in a space where you have complete control over everything. So all of a sudden you have to think completely outside the box. So the way he approaches teaching and the way he's always taught me is that here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses, here's your general style of how you're going to fight somebody. And to give you an example, he uses terms like the mongoose versus the destroyer. How does a mongoose fight? A mongoose fights in and out, in and out, in and out, baiting, and then right at that critical moment, pay for it and it's over.
Right.
Whereas the destroyer, which actually tends to be the way that I fight, is the person that just makes you pay every single time you come anywhere near me. And then when I finally get you pissed off, then I knock you out.
Right. Right.
And it works. You know, it works based on my personality because I'm not patient.
Right.
If you get close enough for me to hurt you, I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to keep doing it until I break you psychologically, and then I'm going to plant my elbow squarely against your chin as many times as I have to until you stop moving.
Take that, mongoose.
Monkey.
That's not to say that one style is necessarily better than the other. He just tailors it very artistically towards your personality so that you can adjust and flow based on the natural chaos of what a fight is.
Right.
Which
and that's art.
Is an art.
That's art.
I never thought of martial arts, arts being an operative word in that phrase, as an art because I always thought of it very linearly until he switched his curriculum around and said, okay, we're going to tailor this to you as a person. And all of a sudden it very much became an art for me.
And you think of music, I mean, there are only, if you want to put it this way, there are only, I guess you could say 12 moves. There in Western music, there's only 12 tones. That's it.
People are still suing each other over stealing riffs.
And the whole There's only 12. There's 12 notes, and you can do any number of things with those. And that the whole creative expression of Western music is based on those tones and the infinite variation of their combinations and how they're applied rhythmically and how they're applied in counterpoint and how they sit next to each other. That to me is the ultimate expression of people think of music as like this hugely creative thing, which it is. But what's interesting is that it starts with, if you reduce it to its basic limitations, it really opens your mind up as to how to look at other things that seem really linear and rigid at first sight. And then you realize, well, shit, if music is based on very simple ideas, then that means that other things that seem to be based on very simple ideas, there's no reason those can't also be considered artistic. Art is about, well, I guess some people might take issue with my use of the word art versus creativity, and I don't know who is just, what other people's opinions are on where those words overlap, but I think that what art is, maybe if I'm just shooting from the hip, is the creative application of ideas to create something that is unique to you. Something that is original, not that it's never been done before, because people can spontaneously have the same idea in different parts of the world. It's not that it has to be the only time it's ever happened, but that it arose naturally out of you, and you weren't. I don't know. I mean, it's fuzzy, but
to be art, it must truly move you.
Well, you're talking about reaction. I mean, that's a whole different way of defining
Not really.
art. But you mean move the creator?
Either way.
Yeah. That's great.
Either way.
Yeah, if it taps into something in you,
and if you create it, who gives a shit if anybody else likes it?
Yeah.
And doesn't go isn't there something? I mean, watch Sandi do that all the time. It must be similar if when you go and you look in the kitchen at home, where you don't have this infinite supply or whatever, and you can order. You just like, well, shit, the family's hungry, and I would like to have dinner on a plate within the next 90 minutes. And what do I have to do that with?
90 minutes. I usually get 20.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Whatever it is.
I have a lot more time in a day than you do to cook.
We don't have a hungry 4-year-old.
Yeah, we don't have a hungry 4-year-old.
Hangry 4-year-old.
But that's the creative. I mean, you're forced in the parameters. The restrictions almost focus you and make it more interesting.
I remember hearing somebody. I wish I could remember. I think it was some stupid show where I do remember. It was what was the show? Pawn Stars. I hate to admit that.
Actually, our last guest has done music for Pawn Stars.
It was he was just trying to describe art, and he said the only way to define art is to be art. It must move you, and I thought that was complete bullshit because I have seen a lot of art that did not move me. It's still art,
right?
But I took that on the other side, like I mentioned, which is, for me, like if I create a dish, I'm stoked on it,
right?
I mean, we all thrive as chefs for the affirmation of another person to tell us that our dish was good. But at the end of the day, if I like it, I like the way it looks, I like the way it tastes, I'm happy with it, I feel good about the process I went through to make it.
Yeah.
Fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
And then you eat it and it's
That's
gone.
my art. You don't have to like my art. I mean, we have art hanging in our house that my father-in-law will tell you, I hate this. It's ugly.
Right.
It's it's really true art because it makes me feel something.
Right.
It's just not necessarily a positive thing, but who says it has to be a positive
Right.
thing? I can give you a dish that tastes like shit.
Right. If it
You know what I
moved
mean?
you.
It moved you. Might have moved you to the bathroom. But it moved you.
Davey says this all the time at our gigs, like the idea that if you're having an on night, and it's totally true, if you're having an on night and nobody's responding, but you know you're on top of your shit, you don't care. And if you're having an off day, conversely, you say this all the time, if you're having an off day, you don't like what you're playing, no amount of applause can make you feel better about it.
Yeah, there's no external thing that's going to change my mind.
If you take a shit,
It's like sending a steak out overdone and you know it's overdone, but you send it out anyways. Like, even if that person has no idea, you're still going to feel bad about that.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You take a shitty solo and people are like, God, he's great. I'm like, no, I'm fucking not.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's you don't say that to them.
But if you do say that, then you sound like the narcissistic asshole that everybody thinks is an artist.
But you're thinking that. Maybe you don't say it, but you're thinking in your
say
head.
Thank you, but
It's like criticizing your food before anybody has a chance to taste it because you know what mistakes you made. I learned this as a carpenter. When I was a carpenter, I had a boss that I, as a general rule, hated. But he said a couple of things that really kind of were poignant to me that stuck with me over the long term. One of which was the difference between a good carpenter and a great carpenter is a great carpenter knows how to hide his fuck ups.
That's good. That's awesome.
Because it's true.
It's
we all
fuck up.
Everybody cuts something wrong. You run out of wood. You can't cut it again. You know, you got to make do with what you got. You just got to know how to take it and make it so that the person who bought it and is living with it doesn't know you fucked it up.
That's cool.
You know, and it's one of the reasons I don't bake. Because I don't have that freedom. I'll bake at home because my wife will eat it because she's stoked that I baked for her, but she's the baker. She's good at that. At work, I try not to bake because I just don't have that leeway.
Right. Where I can fire and forget. You gotta get it right.
You know, if I'm making a sauce, like, okay, it could be off a little here or there. I can fudge the ingredients. I know it tastes good. I know it's
along the way too.
I know.
That's something that's
but with
pretty
baking, you don't know until it's done.
Right.
And if it's wrong, it's wrong.
It's real
and it's
wrong.
not like things go a little bit wrong in baking. It's always catastrophic.
It's either edible or it's not.
It's way too black and white, and also it's way too messy and way too slow.
Too many
It fills
dishes.
your whole kitchen.
Working with flour sucks because you're gonna wear all of it.
You really need a kitchen about 3 times the size of either of our kitchens to work with. Seems like to bake
Efficiently
effectively.
bake without having to wash things and
you need to have a level
clear
of patience
all
that
the
I
counters.
possess. I like to just fire it in 3 minutes and be done.
Yeah.
That's cool.
In
good.
music though, you kind of have the same. You kind of have the same problem as baking. Like, you only got one shot.
Well,
you're in front. I mean, unless you're recording.
And another thing that I think is interesting about music, and I was thinking about food and how to tie that in, but it really depends on the kind of music you're making. For us, King Taylor Project is hugely improvisational and is hugely, you know, we're not jazz musicians, but we have that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's our aesthetic and that's our approach.
As somebody who doesn't play
project.
music, that's just your personalities coming out of your music.
Right.
That's just who you are.
That's our approach to this project. Whereas, you know, if we were playing on something else, it might not. But that's how we want to approach this project, and that's very different from having. Like if we're doing Davey's original music, it's very through composed. That's a whole different mind. I mean, it's a little bit more like baking because if you get off and you're because his stuff is not. It's not something you can be like, all right, I'm just gonna. It's arranged and the voices are there for a reason. Everything sits where it sits for a reason, right? And if you get off by a measure to, you got to really work hard to be like, fuck, where am I? Okay, here we go.
Ask any
just
DJ.
thinking- Yeah. Oh, yeah. DJs for sure. I was thinking another good analogy in the non-DJ world, at least, would be most music like funk, whatever. When we saw Wolfpack, if you flub a note, miss an entrance somewhere, it's still fine. It can still come together. But then the fugue.
Oh, dude!
If you miss your entrance, it's just done.
There's
no getting
garbage.
back on the train.
Yeah, you can.
So that's more.
If you
baking.
were working really hard and you could find like, okay, this is the top of bar 5, but 1 through 4 is already a disaster.
Yeah,
like you can't go back and you can get back on the train, but whereas with sometimes with like jazz or more improvisational music, just because you didn't hop on at the beginning, even those bars aren't throwaway. In something like a fugue, those bars are garbage until you find where you are. But in jazz music, It's a bit more like, non-baking cooking, where every move can be like, well, shit, I can turn that into this.
When you have the other people involved that are adjusting with you.
Right. That doesn't have to have, even if it started as a mistake, it doesn't have to continue to be. You can just be like, well, fuck, well, let's go over here then.
Yeah.
And that's the same with
free-flowing.
Yeah, same with
that
cooking.
That makes me think of the quote that Travis, I used to work with at Greens, he told me one time, he said, every drop is a new opportunity. You have to prove, every single drop when you're in a kitchen is an opportunity. You could have nailed the last one and you fuck up on this one, and that's you just fucked up. It doesn't because you
the last dish has nothing to do with this dish,
right.
And that's kind of how music is. It's every night, every song, every solo, every note is a new opportunity. With the kind of music that we play, is everything we do is a new opportunity. I could have fucked up the last, the last verse, but there's still 3/4 of a song, and I'm still gonna pull it out of the box. There's no reason to just give up.
It's so fun to watch somebody work with something that's got such precise, exacting parameters and just fucking nail it.
Because when you nail it, people who don't understand what's happening don't know.
You don't know unless they mess it up.
You don't know unless they mess it up.
Yeah.
And if you don't notice it as just the average listener, that means that person is fucking
That's a
nailing
great
it.
thread in life, though.
Yeah.
People always know when you fuck up.
Yeah.
Right.
No matter what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can tie it to a lot of things. Like if I'm a good parent, I'm just a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
But if I'm a bad parent,
you want a cookie?
Oh yeah.
I mean, if I'm a bad parent, there's all kinds of consequences that come along with it. If I'm a good chef, everything's running perfect.
Yep.
Right.
Kitchen's running great. Catering gigs are running great. Everything goes off without a hitch. Everybody, thank you very much. You did a great job. On to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You fuck it up, you just ruin somebody's wedding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And I've said that before about performing when, especially at restaurants and restaurants and bars. If you're a solid band and you sound professional, then people sometimes don't get the cue to applaud.
It's like run of the mill.
But dude, you see a shitty acoustic guitar person, that's not everybody playing acoustic guitar and singing is shitty. But seriously, you'll see somebody doing shitty acoustic guitar and singing. They finish a song, everybody's like, oh, because it's so apparent to them that it's live and it wasn't great.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe there's sometimes a pressure to be like, to maybe make them feel it's like a consoling kind of clap.
And I'll take it even a step further, that I think we're all looking as people for that affirmation.
Yeah.
And when you don't get it, especially when you know you did a good job, it's kind of soul crushing.
Yeah, it can be.
But you know damn well that if you made even the slightest mistake, you're going to hear it from 17 different people.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Like if you guys get up on stage and you don't feel good about what you did,
right?
Like you're gonna, if you're not going to hear it from anybody else, you're going to hear it from each other.
Right.
No matter what. But if you get up there and you guys are all on point, the crowd might just be like, "Oh, it was great."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
But
You did a
that's
great
also
job.
the good thing
you did
about
what you should have done.
Right. Exactly.
That's a great thing about being in a band with people who are appreciative and notice things, though, is that even if we don't get it from people who may be listening, which is totally, we've had a bunch of gigs like that where no one will applaud, but we know it's not because we're bad. They're just having conversations and eating their dinner and whatever. But the three of us will look at each other and be like, yeah, man, that was a great solo. Like, we can understand that what we didn't go unnoticed by people who actually were paying attention, which are the other people in your band.
Well, I mean, I even think about this just occurred to me that I could be at, maybe it's a little different to be at a football game or something, but I could definitely have a football game on TV, and someone can make the most astounding catch you've ever seen, and if I were a receiver, I would look at that and I would stop and be like, holy shit, and lose my shit. But to me, it might be background. I might be reaching for the Doritos. It's the same thing.
You got paid how much to do that?
Well, it's not even that I wouldn't. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe there's that too.
That's a big part of it for me.
But it's more like if I didn't notice one of the people who's the best in the world at doing this do it, if I didn't freak out, it makes me feel a little bit more empathic towards people who are sitting in a bar and like we're not the best band in the world. I think we've got a solid performance.
Oh, come on, you guys are good.
But I'm just saying, not even to put us in like an NFL athlete, that's the top in the world. That I'm not talking like we're at that level as musicians, but But it's not about level. It's more like if one of the best people in the world at what they do does something right in front of my eyes, and because I'm not attuned to that thing,
That skill set.
Yeah, that skill set. Maybe I don't notice it either. That makes me feel a little bit more like, oh, I kind of get how you could be sitting at a bar and Davey could take the most fucking ridiculous solo and nobody claps. And I go, well, they're not attuned to that.
Yeah.
But I heard it, so I can appreciate
Well, I
it.
mean, the kitchen life will teach you this lesson real fast because the customers that are out sitting at those tables are expecting perfection.
Right.
So when you give them perfection, we're all clapping ourselves on the back at the end of the night. Like, we just fucking killed it.
And they were just like, oh, good. That was good.
And then the only thing you'll hear from the person who wasn't in the kitchen was, well, I didn't see any good reviews about that because nobody talks about it when it's perfect.
Yeah.
But if you serve somebody a bad dish or they get bad service,
That's
you
what
see
they
it
talk.
everywhere. It's the rule of 10. If you have a great experience at a restaurant, you'll tell one person. If you have a bad experience, you'll tell at least 10.
Right. That's why I don't.
it's-
for one, I don't use Yelp anymore.
Well, I hate well,
Because
that's a
people
whole nother-
only
that's a whole
give bad
nother
reviews.
podcast.
Yeah. Way more people
anti-Yelp
go on there
podcast.
to vent about a bad review. It's human nature. Than,
But it's just because you walked in there with an expectation,
Right.
And that's one of the things that I try and explain to the younger guys that I work with who don't have as much experience or haven't worked in as many restaurants. Where it's look, these guys walked in here expecting to pay for a meal.
Right.
You start with the fact that they're paying for this. You add on the fact that there is a level of expectation that is there, regardless of your ability or lack of ability. Like, these people expect a perfect meal.
Right.
And it's just the way the culture has evolved in dining. And San Diego's not even close to what you would expect in LA or Chicago or New York or a lot of these other, San Francisco, where no, they really do expect you to be fucking perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
And no one's going to come in outside of being a chef. If I go to a place and I have an extraordinary meal, I'm going to go in the kitchen and be like, "Hey guys, you guys killed it."
Yeah.
And they're going to hear that like once a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody
Yeah,
else
right.
is just going to expect that from you.
Right.
Right.
And that's just the reality of life.
Yeah.
If you're going to get up on stage and be a musician, people
Right.
are going to expect you to be good.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why the fuck are you on stage?
Why are you assaulting me with your music? I just came here to have dinner. Yeah.
But if I take a suit to a seamstress, and I expect it to be altered, I expect it to be right. Yeah, my dad taught me how to curse, and the kitchen taught me how to perfect it into an art.